Over to you, Chairman.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Sedgemoor District Council's Audit and Standards Committee meeting. I will now hand over to the committee manager, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully those present will hear the meeting. However, in the event of a technical failure, the Chairman will adjourn the meeting and set a new time to reinstate for its reinstatement. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and a copy of the recording will be available on the Council's YouTube channel in the next few days. All members of the committee should have their video on, but should remain muted until invited to speak. If you wish to attract the Chairman's attention, please, where possible, make use of the instant messaging function. Format of the meeting will be as per the agenda published. Over to you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm going to ask each committee member and officer who's taking part in the meeting to introduce themselves and confirm they can see and hear me before we start the official business of this committee. Councillor Will Human.
Councillor Will Human for Markham Wedmore, and I can see and hear you clearly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Bayliss.
Nick Bayliss has just sent his apologies via me. Sorry about that.
Okay. Councillor Hilary Bruce.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Chairman. My name is Hilary Bruce. I'm member for Fairfax Bridgewater, and I can see and hear everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Dyer. Councillor Mike Facey.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Councillor Mike Facey, Burnham-on-Sea North, and I can confirm I can see and hear everyone. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Liz Levy.
Oh, good afternoon. Councillor Liz Levy, Hampboard, Bridgewater. I can see and hear everything.
Thank you. Councillor Rachel Lilly.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Councillor Lilly of the Wyndham Ward. I can hear and see everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Matthews.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Alan Matthews representing Highbridge and Burnham Marine, and I can see and hear everything.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lisa Methley, please.
Hello, everyone. Lisa Methley for Cheddar and Shipham. I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Diego Rodriguez. Okay. Mr. Julian Taylor.
Hello, Julian Taylor, North Petherton Town Council, Town and Parish Council representative. I can see and hear you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Veronica Horman, please.
Hello, I'm Veronica Horman, an independent person, and I can see and hear everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Jeff Lewis. Okay, I'll carry on with the officers and then I'll go back to the missing people. Alison Turner.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alison Turner. I'm Assistant Director of Finance and Property, and I can confirm I can see and hear everything.
Thank you very much. David Johnson.
Hi, David Johnson, Audit Manager for Grant Thornton. I can confirm I can see and hear everyone.
Okay, thank you. Is Julie Massey here?
No, Julie, I believe Julie, she was going to send her apologies to Steve Taylor, but I'm not sure whether she managed to do that. But no, unfortunately, she can't join us today.
Apologies, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you. Alistair Woodland, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Yeah, I can see and hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam Williams.
Good afternoon. I can see and hear everyone. Thank you very much.
And Steve Taylor.
Yes, Chairman, Steve Taylor, Committee Manager, and I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just go back now to the missing people. Councillor Ian Dyer, has he joined the meeting?
It appears not, Chairman.
Okay, and Councillor Diego Rodriguez.
Again, it doesn't appear so.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll now start the meeting using the agenda. Apologies for absence, please.
Yes, apologies from Councillor Nick Bayliss.
Thank you. And minutes of the meeting dated the, sorry, just bear with me, dated the 1st of February 2021. Can I sign these as a true copy? Can I have a proposer and seconder,
I can
please?
propose. Will
Thank you.
Human propose.
Thank you. And Rachel
I'll
is.
second.
Thank
Yes,
you, Rachel.
Chairman, just one minor amendment, just to the numbering. They need to start from minute 39 rather than minute 9. I missed the 30 off when I was numbering them.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any urgent business?
No urgent business, Chairman.
Thank you. Has anybody registered to speak?
No, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And declarations of interest, members? No? Okay. So now we'll move on to agenda item number 6, the annual audit letter. And I'll hand over to David Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. So members will no doubt be aware that this is our sorry, just trying to get myself in order. The annual audit letter, which is the culmination and summary of the work that has been completed in the prior financial year, so in 1920, this relates to. What this report also does, or may not be explicit, but I can confirm that we've completed all our work for 1920. That includes the accounts, the BFM work, the harbour accounts, and the 2 certification returns that the council are required to submit. So we've now formally finished our 1920 work and then moving on to our 2021 work. Members should be familiar with the information within the report. As I say, it's very much a summary of the work that's been undertaken, including the value for money conclusion. There's nothing in here that hasn't been reported previously, Chair, so I wasn't proposing to go into any great detail other than perhaps to draw members' attentions to page 14 of the report, where and onwards, where we have members will see an additional fees being charged for the work that's been completed, and the rationale behind that work, and those costs are included on those 2 pages. As I say, the information in here is a repeat of reports that have been presented to members previously, so I don't propose to go any further unless anybody has any specific questions.
For that, and David, has anyone got any questions, please? No one wishing to speak or ask any questions?
Chair, it's Alison Turner. Can I just make a comment on the fees, please?
Yes, of course. Yes, please do.
Yeah. So David's just mentioned about the increase in the fees that on page 14, and then they're broken down on page 15.
Mm-hmm.
I have had a conversation with Grant Thornton about these, because I do think I don't necessarily agree with them, and I do think they're I think they're quite excessive. I appreciate that it was a difficult year, but it was a difficult year for all of us. And we all had to change the way we were working. So I feel it's unfair that we've had such a big increase given to us. Certainly the council houses valuation, the 4,500, I would agree with that, because I think Grant Thornton had to do quite a lot of extra work on the council house valuations. And also some of our records weren't particularly good, so we did create some of that extra work as well. So I accept that we'd have an additional charge for that, but the rest of the additional fees I'm not particularly happy with. Just and obviously that's for you as a committee to look at to see what you think. But just in terms of process, having spoken to Alex, our previous engagement lead on this, I think that the process is that Grant Thornton submit these fees to the PSAA, and then they will look at the fees to see whether they think they're reasonable, probably ask us what we think, and then they make a decision on what we pay in terms of fees. So it's not actually, the final decision doesn't rest with Grant Thornton or with us, but I feel quite strongly that it's excessive. So that I just wanted to give you my view on the fees.
Thank you for that. Is there anybody else on the committee that would like to say anything about the fees?
Yes, Chair, it's Mike Facey.
Oh yes, thank you, Mike.
Yeah, completely agree with Alison. If we got an officer of the statute and the work that Alison does, I'm sure she's right in her comments, and I would just like to add my personal weight and vote behind Alison. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. I would like to agree with that because I think the fees are a little excessive, to say the least. And I think the biggest bugbear for me, everyone's had to, work differently through this COVID epidemic, and I understand that. But Sedgemoor District Council's finance officers have had the same problems, and they haven't had an increase in salary or anything like that. So as I say, I will go with Alison, and I would object to these fees. Is there anybody else wants to make a comment? Okay, so we now just Grant Thornton will publish their work, or the query that we've got, and then they'll get back to us. Is that correct, Alison?
I think what happens is Grant Thornton will put their fees to PSAA, and they will make a decision on what the reasonable fees are. But I understand they'll probably ask us for our opinion. So if the committee feel the same way, if we could just have a decision, that basically recorded that that's the decision. If that's how members feel, then when we're asked, we'll have a decision. We'll have that answer if you like, and then they still make the final decision. I think that's my understanding of the process. Is that correct, David?
Yes, so we will submit to PSAA the rationale behind the extra fees that we've charged. I think, but I will go away and check before I commit that all those fees prior to the revised planning fee, so the raising the bar, pensions, PPE, I believe they've been pre-approved by PSAA. So those are sort of, if you like, to use a horrible phrase, baked into the fee. But I understand entirely your thoughts on especially the COVID-19 additional fees, and I will take that away and reflect on that with the engagement lead going forward. But Alison is right. We will put down a proposal, and the calculation of the COVID-19 fee is standard across all our clients. It's not we haven't been particularly unduly harsh on you as a council. It is what we've looked at during our figures and the extra work it's required us to complete, and this is what we have come to calculated as a reasonable estimation of the extra cost that we've incurred. But as Alison says, it will get submitted to PSAA, and just I don't want to put us at a disadvantage, but my understanding is that PSAA will contact somebody within the council, probably yourself, Alison, and set a time limit in terms of opportunity to respond. If they don't get a response in that time, they assume that the fees are agreed as read. So, if you are particularly keen to contest and have a look at some of these fees, then I just want to point that out to you, to be open and fair about the process. But ultimately, it is PSAA who decide whether this is a reasonable amount to charge for any additional work.
Okay, thank you very much for that. All we have to do, members, is to just to note Grant Thornton's annual audit letter. So that's that one.
Chairman,
Then sorry, carry on.
Chairman, I just wondered, did the committee wish to vote on whether the fees are appropriate, or are you happy to move on, Chairman?
No, I think we ought to take a vote. Yes, I think that's quite right.
Obviously, we've had a proposer. I don't know if there was a seconder, whether Councillor Facey wishes to second that.
Yes, Steve, most definitely.
Thank you. Councillor Bruce has got a comment. So would you like to tell us what the comment is, please, Hilary?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm in a position to actually judge whether those fees are appropriate or not, but I do place my trust in Alison Turner to know that. So I'm not sure I'm in a position to vote whether they're appropriate or not. Actually, having enough in-depth information in terms of what happens But I would put my faith in Alison Turner that is, you know, if she believes they are not appropriate, then I would support that position.
Right, okay, which is what she does. So is anybody against it or abstaining? No. So I think we can take it that we are supporting.
Yes, Chairman, I think for the minutes you'll be to note the committee's dissatisfaction with the proposed increase in Grant Thornton's audit fees.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you very much. Now going on to agenda item number 7, external audit progress report, and that's over again to you, David.
Thank you, Chair. So this is, again, hopefully members are fairly familiar with this. This is our sort of regular audit progress report sector update, which outlines the actions and the processes and the progress we've made for 2021, apologies, including a timetable in terms of where we feel we'll be in terms of delivery. So as you've already noted, there is a new engagement lead. Julie Massey is taking over from Alex Walling and is in post now, so is undertaking that role as we speak. We have started some initial planning for the 2020-21 audit, including requesting information from management about the risk assessment for the council. And as you can see here, our planning and interim work will include reviewing the council's control environment, understanding of financial systems, and all the other elements that members would expect us to undertake as part of our continuing our understanding of the council. What may have changed slightly from last year is that we are not proposing to do any early transactional testing, but we have built that into our final visit work, and we'll make sure that that's all done in a timely manner. Members will also be aware from the previous audit committee in the presentation there that the new code of audit practice has come into force for value for money, so that will involve a slightly different approach in terms of how we audit that and also how we report that to members. Page 5, you will see just confirmation that we have completed our work on the housing benefit subsidy claim. You will see from here that there was a number of initial test errors that were identified, and that some of this led to an amendment of £492 in the claim. There were also further errors found from what we call 40+ sample testing, where we've had errors in previous years, we are required to automatically undertake extra testing in those areas in the following year in order to ensure that any identified issues from the previous audit have been implemented and no longer sit within the benefit system. Again, though, you'll see that this has identified some more errors, and what we do on that is an extrapolated error. So whereby we calculate what the error would be based on the size of the sample, the size of the error, etc. We wouldn't ask that the council amend for that because it is statistically unsound, but it gives an indication of what the error is in the region of. This was all included in our audit report to DWP, which was submitted in line with the revised timelines. What's not on here, and probably should be, is that we've also completed our work on the pooled housing capital receipts certification claim. That was absolutely fine. There were no issues on that at all, so that has also been submitted. As noted here, we've got a change of engagement team. Julie Mashfield taking on responsibility, and she will be in attendance at future audit committees going forward. I apologise, there's a typo in there. It says Gail, it should say Julie, so be rest assured it is Julie and not Gail. Page 6 is our audit deliverables. There has been a slight change in how we provide our audit plan this year. We require more sort of upfront input from the council in both the VFM and in terms of the what we call informing the risk assessment, which I mentioned earlier. Again, there is a change in that slightly, in that management complete that informing the risk assessment, and it's then brought to audit and standards committee for you to review and approve on the assumption that there isn't any further risks that should have been in there that haven't been outlined. We will wait for that until we can issue our audit plan, because that will identify any further risks that we need to consider within the audit plan. You'll also see that for the following elements, we have yet to put a date on there. As it says in the notification, we are working through our resourcing plans at this current time. We are in conversation with Alison and her team in terms of getting that sorted. And once we know where we are, we can then be in a position to start putting in concrete timetables for getting the work completed. Again, we've had conversations with Alison and her team, and we're aware of what their preferences are and you know, where they would like the audit to happen, and all that gets fed into the sausage machine, if you like, before it churns out the plan for the year. But obviously, once we know where we are with that, we will report that to management and then also to members in future progress reports. Other than that, the rest of the document is our usual sector updates, giving members sort of areas that we think may be of interest to them. Slide 8 and 9 and 10 have the value for money audit approach updated on them, just to remind members and just to give you more flavour and more meat on the bones in terms of what that new approach is. I do have to offer another apology. The appendix that I attached to this report, whilst of interest to Alison, I suspect would not really have much relevance to members other than to give them a wider knowledge of certain accounting issues that we require for grant income due to COVID-19. However, there is an extra report that would be of use to members and would be good to inform them in terms of the impact of the COVID funding on local councils, looking at sort of, you know, building on the fact that we've been in austerity for, well, over 10 years now, since sort of 2008-9, which has put pressure, and the COVID pandemic, even though potentially we are now coming out of it, is obviously clearly not going to be limited to 2020 to 1920 accounts to the 2021 accounts. It is going to have a knock-on impact for a number of years, and there are a number of areas that we consider management and members and, you know, the political lead should be looking at in order to ensure they're fully aware of that impact and any sorts of steps that they could potentially take to do that. I have sent that updated, the correct report to Steve today, and I will ask that he just circulates that to members after the meeting, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Other than that, I didn't have anything else unless anybody had any questions.
Councillor Will Human.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So reading, I think what we obviously have to be particularly concerned about as a committee is errors, because if things are going well, then that's fine. It's where things are not going so well, we ought to be honing in on those. David, this cell 13 and 103, 13, well, 103 seems to be overpayment of benefits because the income wasn't calculated properly. Is that correct?
So nearly. So I mean, housing benefit is a mystical art that people train for years to understand. 103 is the is an overpayment due to local authority error, but the initial error is the incorrect calculation of the rent liability. So it's sort of a debits and credits, if you like. If you have the error in one cell, you have to reflect the overpayment and what the cause of the overpayment was in another cell. But yes, you are, in essence, yes, it is an error due to incorrectly calculated rent liability.
Is the level of errors you're seeing here a kind of standard thing that you'd expect because of the complexity of it, or is there something that is continuing that we've not managed to correct?
In answer to the first part, no, you're not an outlier in terms of errors. You're not significantly higher than anywhere else. You're not, in fact, you're lower than quite a few areas. What you will see from these errors is that 99% of all errors that we find are where human interaction is required. So a lot of housing benefit processes are automated and they're automatically uploaded from DWP, or it's an automatic calculation. And actually where the error comes in is where assessors have to have a manual input. So the classic here is earned income. because there is a deduction from benefit for earned income, but there has to be a manual calculation by the assessor in order to work out what that earned income value is. And that often, and again, even in and of itself, that calculation is fairly complex. And so we tend to find errors there. So there is nothing here that concerns me, given the number of claimants that you have, the number of calculations that are made, you know, the number of issues and sort of guidance and regulations that have to be taken into account. It doesn't give me any cause for concern. I've seen, you know, I've audited places that are significantly less robust than you are here, which I guess is the answer to your question in a long-winded way.
Mm-hmm. And I'm taking it the £492, the £1,203. That's a considered what could be the total error out of the massive amount that is actually being paid out or received in.
So the 492 is an actual amendment because we were able to do 100% testing.
Okay.
But yes, as I said, so 103, it's an extrapolated error. It's based on the value of the claims that we've looked at, the value of the error, and it's a percentage calculation. And I think I couldn't tell you off the, you know, I couldn't give you the exact figure, but I think it was roughly 0.01% of the total population. So you're talking, but obviously 0.01% of a large number still gives you a large number. So, but as I say, because it is a sample, it's an extrapolation on, it's, you know, it's not statistically sound. You'd have to look at everything really. But it's an estimation.
Maybe suggest that 0.001% is actually used, so that we've got a benchmark to measure it by and sort of go, well, yeah, that's reasonable. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Are there any more questions, members? Okay, thank you, David, for all that. And all we have to do on this is to note, you know, we receive the update. So thank you. Now we move on to agenda item number 8, the internal audit progress report, and that's over to Adam. Are you presenting?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
So yes, this is our usual progress report to inform members on the progress being made against the internal audit plan, as well as summarising the outcomes of completed audits and any changes that have been made. Page 3 will summarise the audits we've completed since our last update only in February. But since then we have had one limited assurance report that we want to draw to your attention, and that is on corporate properties health and safety, where we identified a number of weaknesses with the controls, particularly with regards to like policies and procedures, as well as management oversight, which we would consider to sort of be key in ensuring there is an effective control framework in place to manage those risks. All the recommendations within that audit were agreed with management, and there's a sort of tight timescale for delivery of June 2021. So hopefully we'll be able to do a follow-up audit either in sort of Q1, Q2 next year and provide a response on the delivery of those recommendations. Further details of those findings are included on page 4 of the progress report. The other audit I just want to draw to your attention is actually homelessness follow-up. We raised that, I believe, in July's committee last year, which received limited assurance. But since then, all the management recommendations have been completed, which is really positive progress. So just sort of wanted to highlight some some good work there as well. Page 7 provides a summary on our performance throughout the year, and good progress is still being made against delivery of the audit plan. And I believe since then, the audit that was not started has now moved to in progress. And one of those, that draft report, has also been finalised, and we'll be able to provide an update to you as well at the next committee. As usual, the audit plan is being kept under constant review, and that's not changed throughout this year with COVID. And we have to continue to make sure we make changes to ensure we complete as much work as possible to deliver an annual opinion. An up-to-date audit plan is shown on page 11 in Appendix B, which summarises all the opinions we've offered throughout the year and the recommendations we've made. That plan also includes any new audits we've started and any we've had to remove throughout the year. But I just want to draw your attention to our sort of next report that Alistair will present, is where we have removed audits from this year's plan. We have re-evaluated them going into next year's audit plan as well to work out whether they should be included or not. So you'll see that some of those that have dropped will be coming in next year instead. Okay, and that's all from me, unless there's any questions.
Are there any questions, members, for Adam? Okay, well, thank you for that, Adam. And all we have to do is to note the update. So we'll now move on to item number 9, which is the get my teeth in, internal audit plan for 2021 to 2022 and the internal audit charter. Over to you. Is that Alistair going to present that one?
It is. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors. Yep, so the previous report was obviously the 2021 audit plan. This is the plan that I'm now presenting for the next financial year, which covers 21-22. And there's two things in here I'm asking members to approve, which is the audit plan itself, which is Appendix 1, and the charter, which is Appendix 2. What I would ask in terms of what you're looking to do when you approve the audit plan, as it shows at the bottom of page 1 on our report there, is to make sure that you feel comfortable that the audit plan is covering the right areas in the authority to give assurance to this committee. That's something to bear in mind when you're approving. Moving on to page 2, this kind of gives an overview of how the plan was pulled together. And I think the key things you should take away from this page is that the audit plan has been discussed in detail with the senior management team and has had approval from the senior management team that it is covering the right areas. So moving on to page 3. So again, part of our process of pulling our audit plan together is to pull a risk assessment, looking at all the potential areas and things that are going on in the authority and the wider area that could impact on the authority. So this is the summary of the risk assessment, and what it highlights is the key areas that should be included in our audit plan for the year. So moving on to agenda page 4. So once we've pulled the plan together and we've prioritised the area, this aligns where our work is falling against your corporate priorities. Obviously, the role of internal audit is to make sure that organisations are achieving their objectives. So the work that we're doing, we've aligned it to your corporate priorities so you can see the level of work we're doing and where it falls against those objectives. We also have to make sure we're covering core assurance areas. So the chart next to that as well shows where our work is falling against each of the core assurance areas. What I would stress is in any one year we can't cover everything because obviously there's a lot to cover. Local authorities cover a lot of services and deliver a lot. So it is a case of providing coverage over a 2 to 3 year period, but this highlights what our plan for this year will be covering. So if I can ask members to move on to page 7. So page 7 through to 11, this is Appendix 1. This is the actual plan that we're asking you to approve. And what you have is the list or the name of the audit, the brief rationale of why it's in the plan and what it will cover, when we plan to undertake it, so Q1, which starts in April, and then how it links back to your corporate outcomes, the healthy organisation themes, and your corporate risk register. So the chart that we had previously up on page 4, how that was populated was based on how these reviews fall against your corporate priorities. What I would stress is the audit plan will be reviewed regularly on a quarterly basis to make sure that throughout the year it still looks at the right areas, and that would be a conversation obviously with the Section 151 officer and through input from the wider senior management team, because as we appreciate things will change throughout the year. So the final area I'm asking members to approve is the Audit Charter, which starts on Appendix 2, and I do apologise there isn't a page number, but it's at the end of page 11, which would be page 12. It's a requirement under the public sector internal auditing standards to have an audit charter and for it to be approved regularly. So the charter sets out the nature, role and responsibility and status of internal audit within Sedgemoor District Council. This charter hasn't changed too much from previous years. There are a few minor changes to the charter, but what I would stress is those minor changes do not impact on the focus and purpose of this charter, so there's no material changes to it. Those are the two things that we're asking for members to approve, and I would welcome questions or any questions members may have.
Are there any question members for Alistair? No? Mr. Julian Taylor.
Hi, I'm not sure whether this is the right time to raise this on this item. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm looking at the swap top risks. Is this the right time to raise it? Is this the right item? Or am I getting it out of order? It is the right item. Yeah. Right. I see on because I've got and I had a lot of thought about this, but it's on planning, which is planning and housing and planning control. And we had a memo round saying what risks do we think the council was up to. And one of the things I came across was when we dealt with a planning application in North Petherton, I found that the Director of Inward Investment was the same person as the Director of Planning and Development Control. And I felt there was perhaps a risk in having the same person, one person who should be giving advice to the council on directing inward investment and as a priority, as opposed to a person who's there in a professional capacity to look at the nature of planning and how that actually works out. And I felt there was possibility of some degree of conflict of interest. And I saw this as a risk. And you would ask in what way there was advice given, because I always understood that planning was to be a very dispassionate, professional responsibility, which looked entirely at the planning law and requirements and was fair to all. Whereas if you have a responsibility for inward investment, then you have a different responsibility. Very simple question.
Okay, I think I caught most of that. Obviously, from what you've said, you've raised a potential risk. But I think in this case, it would probably be something that would be worth discussing in more detail with management for a wider discussion, if that's okay.
Well, I think it's. I'm not on the council, obviously, but I'm an external member, and sometimes on our town council in North Petherton, we have to cope with considerable criticism of planning over a number of issues. And unfortunately, because of the nature of planning and development control committees, external bodies are only allowed 3 minutes to be able to elucidate arguments and discussions and make comment. So it's weighed against us, and this does seem an area which we should be discussing in an open forum to involve all as a community.
Okay, I think, as I said, I think I've caught most of it, but I think it's one of those areas that might be worth, if you could send it in an email, just to make sure we're clear on exactly what's being said, to have a wider discussion on it, if that's okay. So I'm not 100% sure it's necessarily something that's relevant for our plan for next year. It sounds more like something regarding an officer response at this stage.
I raise it because there is a risk, because I would suggest if somebody was really objecting to a planning application or the actions of the council, they could in fact go for judicial review or could go to the ombudsman of a conflict of interest which hadn't been fully taken into account by the council.
Mr. Taylor, over to you, Alison.
Yeah, can I just make a comment, sort of following up from what Alistair said, really? If there's a specific issue that you've got, you really need to raise that outside of this meeting, because we need to look at that. There's various mechanisms for us to look at any specific issue that's raised. But in terms of things like conflict of interest, when an audit happens of planning, all of the processes are looked at and who gets involved in what processes and how we deal with planning applications. So that would be looked at, when an audit's done in that regard, it would be included in the scope. But as I said, if you've got a specific sort of example of where you feel something sort of hasn't worked right, then if you raise that separately outside of this meeting, then certainly have a look at it, to see what it involves.
I try to raise this as a general principle rather than involve specific planning applications. I think it would be wrong. I think beyond the scope of this meeting to raise specific planning applications. But I think we need to be aware of the potentials for difficulties.
Okay, Councillor Will Human.
Thank you, Chair. Although I understand what Alison's saying, I have a great deal of sympathy for Julian's point of view that we seem to have a position where an officer is two-hatting and there can be a conflict of interest. It's not about specific examples, it's about the whole ethos that this could lead to a dissatisfaction and also someone complaining, as Julian pointed out, and taking it much further. I can understand the principle being an issue where you have someone on the one hand is hell-bent, I mean, shouldn't use that term, is very keen to promote building, and on the other hand is meant to be looking very carefully at planning applications. One would say that there would be an inclination to encourage large-scale building where sometimes it may be inappropriate, and I think local places could object to that on that basis. So I think all Julian's asking for is that Alistair includes that particular topic in one of his risk assessments. That's all.
Absolutely.
Is that possible, Alistair, to be able to do that?
Well, I've made the notes on the comment. I would still probably just appreciate something clarified in the email, so I've got it written down to make sure we are clear on what the exact issue is being stated. Yeah, it can feed into the risk assessment, but I would imagine, given what's being said, it's probably something that I know the officers would want to consider in the first instance before we potentially do any work in that area. So what I would suggest at this point, we conclude it in the risk assessment. We do have a rolling audit plan that has a number of areas on it as well. So this will be one of those areas that we'll pull onto it, and I guess it will be one of those wider discussions in the future of, does this come into the audit plan as we do part of that review throughout the year and what that means. But I think in this first instance, it's probably, I would want to be 100% clear on the issue from an email, if that's okay, and to give senior management the chance just to look through it as well beforehand.
Okay.
All I would do is send you an email, which would be repeating what I've said, and I understand it's all available on the YouTube anyway, so it would be just a duplication, but if you want it in writing, that's fine.
Yeah, if I can ask you to send an email to presumably Alison Turner, is that where you want it to go, Alistair?
Or I
would it go to you?
Send it to Steve Taylor and he would forward it on.
Right, okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much. So, members, are there any more questions? So we now have to take a vote on the two.
One more question. I see in this risk assessment is broadband funding. And I was quite horrified to find that the funding on broadband is for connecting Devon and Somerset is totally inadequate. And I just wondered what the council's view of this was. I'm just desperately trying to find on my other computer what the figures are, but it's a very small amount. It's a very small amount there is that we have. We've got there's 23,000 user businesses, household who cannot receive broadband within the southwest of Devon and Somerset, and the broadband proposals when connecting Somerset and Devon are suggesting that only 1,250 people are to receive the £800 grant. So I did write to them and say, how will you select those people to have the grant, bearing in mind that the funding is totally inadequate? But that is a real risk, because it does mean that we won't fulfil our sort of promises to encourage total broadband coverage throughout the whole area. I know that I'm very lucky. I've got something like 15 megs, which is very slow in our village, and many people are cut off. Other people in the centre of North Petherton are cut off totally and can't get on. and it does seem that that is a real risk to us that we're not fulfilling our obligations.
Okay, thank you for that. Hilary Bruce, you've got a question, Councillor Hilary Bruce?
Yes, thank you, Chair. A quick observation, if I might, before I proceed with my question. Julian, there's some sort of interference with your sound. It's extremely difficult to understand what you're saying because there's background noise or interference, but just a comment. A question really about the plan in terms of the items that have been dropped and are now on the 21-22 plan. Is there anything that can protect items from being dropped again? Is there any kind of mechanism? Is that just up to us when we review the plan next time?
So in terms of the audit plan itself, as I said, there's a number of stakeholders that can influence the plan. As an audit committee, you can have oversight of the plan and you want independent assurance on the areas that matter to you. Obviously, Alison Turner's got to make sure she gets sufficient assurance around financial controls, and senior management need to make sure they get sufficient independent assurance around the matters they're responsible for. In terms of items that drop, there is only so many days that we can provide, so it is a case of always prioritising. I think this year has been probably the most disruptive because of COVID and all the urgent matters that have cropped up, etc. So in terms of protecting those areas, it will always come down to a case of what's the most important areas to look at, and that's a decision that's obviously taken through a collaboration of views.
Okay, so I mean, obviously one of my interests is the climate change agenda and making sure that that stays up top at the priority. So I imagine that already is for the council, so hopefully it will remain one of the priorities as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now members, we have to vote on two separate items. The first one is the Audit Charter. So can I have a proposer and a seconder for that, please? Proposer is Will Human. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Lisa Methley. Have I got any abstentions or against? No. So we can take that as voted through. Thank you very much. And the other one is the audit plan for 2021 to 2022. Can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Human, and a seconder, please. Again, Councillor Lisa Methley. Thank you very much, both. Again, have I got anybody abstaining from this vote? Anyone against? You can take that then as a vote. Thank you very much. And thank you, Alistair, for presenting. We're now moving on to agenda item number 10, overdue swap audit actions. And I don't know if Andrew's here, so I don't know whether he wants to say any comments.
Yes, I am here, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. It's just to report the high-level audit actions. There are currently no audit actions outstanding. There are currently 10 in progress. So it's good news to not be bringing any forward to you for your consideration at this meeting.
Thank you very much. I would just like to say to everyone concerned, well done, because in the circumstances we've been in the last year, to have no outstanding actions is a great achievement. So thank you very much indeed to everyone concerned. Now moving on to agenda item number 11. Can I pass over to Angela Farmer, please?
Good afternoon, members. Thank you. I'm going to try and achieve a screen sharing my screen. So if it goes pitifully wrong, I'll apologise now. I can't find it now. Steve, can you share the appendix from the equalities report?
Okay, 1 second.
See if you can do it that way. It might be easier.
Chairman, at this break, is somebody, I've got so much background on my that pop is unbelievable. It's hard to understand. It seems like it's coming from Julian Taylor's.
Well, I wish I could say that were true, but I think that's an indication of the real difficulties we're experiencing with broadband in this community.
Yeah. Can I just ask everyone to put their mic on mute, please? And I'll put mine on mute as well, so see if that helps.
Thank you, members. Before you today, what I've tried to do is encapsulate in one page to avoid you slogging through loads of text, an overview of what the work that we've done in 2020 and some of the work that we're proposing in 2021. Members may recall that collectively with the other partners in Somerset, of the other councils, with fire service and with health, we came up with a joint set of quality objectives. We are required by law to have quality objectives and review them every 4 years as part of our specific duties under the Equality Act 2010. So we've got 5 quality objectives currently. The shortened versions are, I've just highlighted sort of key words, which is integration, mental health, Gypsies and Travelers, staff networks and accessibility. They are currently under review and we will be looking at them over the course of the next couple of months. But on the basis that we are where we are, these are the objectives that we're currently working to. My intention this afternoon is just to give you a brief overview of highlight a couple of the things that we've achieved, which hopefully members will see have improved or recognise our work within the equalities agenda. I think the first one and the first highlight really is Gypsies and Travelers. COVID, if you can say this, has really been an opportunity for us as a council, because we've been able to, using the with government support, set up a temporary site. Now, it's not the world's best site. It's a piece of unused highway at junction 24, which runs along the Argos distribution centre. But what we found by actually having a temporary site, we were able to actually use different powers, but certainly the police powers, if we needed them, to move travellers on from unauthorised encampments. Overall, it's been a real success, and what we have found, looking back over the course of the last year, that in actual fact, by having a temporary site, it's more of a deterrent than something that people will use. As I said, it's not a great site. It's really basically a piece of unused highway, and we put in facilities such as portable toilets and water and rubbish collection. But overall, we have achieved a great step forward, I think, in respect of travellers, and we are now making progress because the council late last year agreed to work with Highways to continue with the site for the next 18 months. By doing that, it allows us to give us a little bit of breathing space to actually identify some more permanent pitches for travellers, and we're currently in the process jointly across the county of doing some searches of land availability, and we'll be reporting back to that later on in the year. We've now got a new contract in respect of disability engagement with a company called AJM Healthcare. They've created the Somerset Disability Engagement Service. That isn't. We are now working with Somerset County Council, South Somerset District Council, and Mendip District Council in the provision of that service. And certainly they started the service, I think, late last year, and certainly to date, despite COVID, they have really pushed forward, and they've been having virtual coffee mornings, and we're now starting to get some really good engagement across all types of disability, something that we haven't really seen before. So we're really looking forward to working with them, and as we move out of COVID, actually doing some face-to-face engagement work. The other thing I think I'd probably mention is obviously Esol, which is English for speakers of other languages. We've always used that very much as a face-to-face program, and we've very quickly converted that into very much an online Facebook type approach. That's still being well used, and we're supporting a number of people to learn English, cultural English, to support them into moving on with their lives. But overall, that I think considering the situation we've been in, I think we've achieved quite a lot this year, and certainly our plans for 21 are again moving things forward. We've got a lot of work to do around the lesbian, gay, bisexual and trans community. We're working with a local voluntary community sector organisation called Diversity Trust to move that one forward. We're doing a lot of work around hate crime. Our current there's an organisation called SARI, which is Stand Against Racism and Inclusion, based in Bristol, and they are currently seeking funding to continue with that service. But we're actually having a more collective approach to hate crime. We believe that, you know, the outcome of COVID and moving forward, we could see an increase in hate crime, possibly perpetuated by some of the people being in lockdown, but we will see what happens. But overall, very much a snapshot, I think, of what we've achieved this year. I took this to OMT last week, and there will be a number of other pieces of work coming forward, including some work to do around race equality and linking planning and inequalities, so that there is a better mix. They would seem two areas which don't seem to, like oil and water, don't seem to mix, but we're going to do some work around there, and of course training. So overall, just as I said, despite COVID and all the restrictions that we've had, we have achieved quite a lot. Immensely proud of the work we've done with Gypsies and Travelers and the support I've received from management on that. But overall, happy to take any questions from members.
Thank you for that overview, Angela. Are there any questions, members, that you would like to ask? Mr. Julian Taylor.
Hi. Can I have a copy of that sheet, please? Can you send me a copy of your sheet, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Okay, well, we just need to receive an overview, which we have. So thank you for that, Angela. Now we'll move on to item agenda 12, which is the risk management update. Again, that's over to you.
Apologies, the cat's just decided to join committee as well. Thank you, members. We've got before you the 6 monthly report on our strategic risks and our operational risks. So you have 2 registers before you. A risk is a threat or an opportunity for the council. In the main, the risks on the register are mainly threats, although probably you could read some of them as opportunities as well. We have 17 strategic risks and 44 operational risks. The operational risks do take into consideration the medium to long term impacts of COVID, although that very much is a moving feast at the moment, and we will review those in due course. There are our 3 highest risks on the register at the moment are obviously our jetty, the volatility and uncertainty of government funding, and the financial impact of COVID. They're the ones which score the highest risks on the register at the present time. That register is reviewed monthly by operational management team, and a robust discussion goes forth as to what else should be included onto the register with them, and any reviews of risks as we need to do. And you'll be interested to note, taking into consideration the conversation you've just had with Alistair, that obviously they are linking their audit programme with what we have on our risk register as well. So there is starting to be a real synergy between the risks that we have as a council and certainly the work of SWAP. Overall, we are progressing with risk. I think we've got a lot of work to do this year. We're going to have a new template. We're going to have a number of other things to do. The risk management strategy be reviewed. But overall, I would be grateful for members to consider whether they think there's any other risks that we should be taking into consideration as a council. But before you, the registers today. So happy to take any questions or any thoughts on to future risks.
You're on mute.
Councillor Lisa Methley, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering in Appendix 1, SR 44, oh gosh, I've got too many screens going at the moment here. SR 44 in Appendix 1, which is on climate change. And in the mitigations listed, there's no mitigation to include a portfolio holder with climate change as their sole responsibility, you know, to recognize the importance of this issue to Sedgemoor's future and global future, in fact. And it's twice been recommended to by community scrutiny, most recently in the climate change strategy, which was unanimously approved by full council. And, you know, already, as you say, the risk register is linked to the SWAP audits, and I can see that the climate strategy has been moved into the next year's audit. And at the last council meeting, from the reports from councillors, there was climate change was not even brought up in any of the reports. So I think that we need something here, a mitigation, where there is a portfolio holder with climate change, perhaps as their sole responsibility, to make sure that this is kept at the forefront of the council.
Thank you, Councillor Methley. I will certainly raise that with Teresa Harvey, and when we do our next operational risk review, which will be in April, and we'll raise that. And if I'll wait for her direction, but on the direction that she does, then we'll include that as mitigation, and you'll see that when I come back into the committee in October.
Thank you very much
for raising that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, members? No? Okay, well, on this one, we've just got to receive an update on the risk registers. So we've received that. So can I thank everyone for your attendance at this meeting today? And I am now going to be closing the meeting. Thank you very much.